Do you find yourself jumping from site to site or wading through thousands of search results to find answers about God's Word and His creation? Well, no more. SearchCreation.org brings the top creation and apologetic websites together into one search engine while ignoring the thousands of sites that push lies and half-truths. So if you have questions about molecular chemistry, deep space, dinosaurs, or how to defend your faith in a godless world, visit us at SearchCreation.org.
Hi, we just had an episode interviewing Alan Shlemon about pro-life apologetics, and now we are going to go into an extended interview with him and talk more about pro-life apologetics and how we can equip you to have an answer in such discussions. So, thank you, Alan.
I know, Alan, I love how you simplified in the Creation Today show how all we have to do is ask one question: is it okay to kill a human being? Because the science is clear, very, very clear from everything you shared on the show, that the unborn baby is indeed a human being. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. Keep going. You talk about this all over the place. As a matter of fact, before you go, I just got to say, you're going to be doing a camp on this, right? Camp Joshua.
That's right. Yeah, every year, Oregon Right to Life invites me up there to train their top pro-life students who have to apply to this camp. And what we do is I spend about 8 hours just in one day going over all the science, all the philosophy, all the evidence in favor of, and of course, even in favor of abortion, and of course, against abortion. So I train these students in the art of pro-life persuasion, but that's not all. In fact, that's just half of it. The second day, I take them to downtown Portland, which of course is a very fairly liberal city. A lot of
liberal. Good word for it.
Yes.
And then what I do is I say, okay, now let's take these tactics that we've learned academically, intellectually, and let's apply them to real abortion choice advocates on the street. Let's actually practice these tactics with people who disagree with you. And what happens in that experience is that these people then become very confident that they can then share their convictions with other people when they go back home, with their friends or their family, because they've just done it with strangers who actually disagree with them. And so this is why that Camp Joshua is such an amazing pro-life training experience, is because it gives you not just sort of the arguments and the tactics, but it gives you a real life situation to actually practice them out in real life with people who disagree.
Wow. Okay, so
Yes.
you're going to break down your entire 1 week class in the next 10 minutes, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Bring it on, baby, bring it on.
Push fast forward.
Yes. All right, well, give us some of your things that you share there and kind of break that down in a few minutes with us.
What about the sled test?
Well, I'm sorry?
What about the sled test?
Yeah, I'll mention the sled test. Just to clarify though, Eric, you said that at the beginning of the show here, you said, well, there's one question, and that is it okay to kill a human being? And that is the key question that everybody asks. But remember, the key question I was saying is, what is the unborn?
Oh, yeah.
That's the key question that I want pro-lifers to turn the conversation back to and focus on that key question: what is the unborn?
My bad on that. I just got to tell you, when we were brainstorming for the show, we thought about having that be one of the titles. When is it okay to kill a human being, to catch people's interest? So that's where that one came from. My bad.
Well, no, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the logic of the pro-life view says, look, it's wrong to kill an innocent human being. Abortion kills an innocent human being, therefore abortion is wrong.
Yeah.
So you stated the first half of that syllogism, of that argument.
Yeah.
And then we're just simply saying, look, if the unborn is a human being, then abortion kills that innocent human being, therefore that's why abortion is wrong. So anyways, all that to say is, yeah, I think we need to, as pro-lifers, focus on that key question: what is the unborn? And so, of course, I already showed that from science, the answer is decisively yes, it's a human being. Now, what happens is a lot of times people say, well, okay, it might be a human being, but you know what? It's not a valuable human being. You know, unborn human beings, yeah, they might be a human being, but they're not as valuable as born ones. And sometimes they might couch it with personhood language. They say, look, the unborn might be a human being, but it's not a person. And then I have a key question I ask, or I think anybody should ask, and that is this: what's the difference? What's the difference between a human being and a human person, right? And they have to have an answer to this question, because they've just made the incredible claim that there exists a group of human beings out there that we can kill with impunity simply because they're not persons. Well, really? Well, how can you tell the difference? What's the difference between a human being and a human person? And the answers that I hear, in fact, even when I debated a feminist a couple years ago at a university in San Diego, she took this route of saying, yeah, it's a human, but it's not a person. And so I asked, well, what's the difference? And the usual answers I get will fall under one of four categories: size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. And you can remember those with the acronym SLED, S-L-E-D. And each of those letters, of course, stands for size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. In other words, I agree with an abortion choice advocate that yes, the unborn is different than a born human being, but only in those four categories. But you'll see none of those four categories is a relevant distinction. In other words, you cannot disqualify a human being from being valuable or from being a person simply because they differ in those four categories. And let me just give you an illustration, or let me show you how each one of those doesn't work. So for example, size, the S in SLED. Yes, it's true, the unborn is smaller than a born human being. But why does size have anything to do with someone's value, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
Marianne, you're going down now, girl. I might chair up a little taller. You're shorter.
Yeah. That's right. In fact, actually, it's funny you say that, Eric, because a lot of men will be like, yeah, well, aren't men generally larger than women? So doesn't that mean they're more valuable? And I'm like, sir, please don't make that argument.
That's not a good argument.
But yeah, men are generally larger than women. Does that mean men are more valuable than women? Well, of course not. Does it mean they're more of persons than women? Of course not. My 7-year-old daughter is a lot smaller than me, but just because I'm larger, it doesn't mean that I'm more valuable or more of a person than her. And so because born human beings have this difference in size and we don't discriminate against smaller people, well, the unborn is still just smaller also. So why would we then disqualify the unborn for simply being smaller when we don't make that same distinction with born human beings? So size is irrelevant. Okay,
Right.
What about the L in SLED test? It stands for level of development. It's true, yes, the unborn is less developed than a born human being. But again, why does that matter? My 7-year-old daughter, again, hate to pick on her, but she hasn't even fully developed her own body.
Yeah.
Her reproductive system isn't even fully developed enough to carry a child. She can't get pregnant. And yet a 17-year-old girl certainly can get pregnant. Does that mean that my daughter is less valuable than a 17-year-old girl? Well, of course not. Because how developed you are is irrelevant to your value. And so just because the unborn is still developed, just still less, it doesn't mean that therefore the unborn is less of a human being or less valuable than a 17-year-old or a born human being. So again, there's S and L, and then we have the E in the SLED test, stands for environment. Okay. Now, yes, it's true. The unborn is in a different location, a different environment than a born human being. But as my friend Frank Beckwith used to say, where one is has no bearing on who one is, right? I mean, just because you float up in space in a spacesuit, which, by the way, you're not a viable human when you're in space, of course. Just because you're in space, it doesn't mean that you're somehow of a different value or you're not a person. Or you put on scuba gear and swim underwater. Now you're in a different environment. Does that mean you've changed your value or your status as a person? Of course not. And so if that's not the case, then how does a 7-inch journey down the birth canal magically transform a non-valuable, non-person into a person or a valuable human being? It can't.
Right.
Nothing has changed except location. And then finally, the D in the SLED test stands for degree of dependency. And again, yes, it's true. The unborn is more dependent upon the mother for its survival. Okay. But again, why does being dependent upon somebody somehow disqualify you from being valuable? There's many elderly people today that are dependent upon their grown children to be cared for. We don't disqualify them from being valuable. Or suppose for a moment you were at a pool party and you were the last person to leave the pool area to go inside, and you were to witness a toddler fall in the deep end of the swimming pool. Now, their life is entirely dependent upon you for their survival, for you jumping in and rescuing them. Could you say, well, little kid, sorry, but because you're dependent upon me for your survival, you are not a person. You are not valuable. That's absurd, of course. Because that's why what I'm saying is it doesn't matter that someone's dependent upon someone else. And yeah, the unborn is dependent upon its mother for survival, but that doesn't justify disqualifying them from being valuable.
Wow, I know some 25-year-olds. I know some 25-year-olds that are still dependent on mom and dad. So
right, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And so that's why I say the only way that you can justify disqualifying the unborn from being valuable is in these 4 categories, S, L, E, D. But as you can see, none of them are legitimate ways of justifying discrimination against the unborn. And by the way, this is really what abortion is about. It is a form of unjust discrimination.
Wow.
And if you think about it, throughout all of history, we've seen many instances in which a class of human beings has been disqualified from being valuable based on an arbitrary characteristic. And so take, for example, with African Americans, even in our own country. Listen carefully. They were a class of human beings. Everybody acknowledged, yes, they were human, but they were disqualified from being valuable simply based upon an arbitrary characteristic. Mm-hmm. What characteristic was that? Their skin color. Mm. Why? So they can be enslaved, right? So they can be used in forced labor. Jews have also been discriminated against in the past, right? They were also considered to be a class of human beings that was disqualified from being valuable simply based on an arbitrary characteristic. What characteristic? Their ethnicity. Yeah. Why? So they can be experimented on and exterminated. And today, unborn children, unborn human beings are also being discriminated against. Because again, they are a class of human beings who's being disqualified from being valuable simply based on an arbitrary characteristic. What characteristic? They're too small, they're not developed enough, they're in the wrong location, and they're too dependent upon their mothers for survival. Why? Well, according to Planned Parenthood, it's because a lot of women want to go on with their careers for basically all sorts of socioeconomic reasons. And so that's why I say the abortion really is about unjust discrimination. And I like to couch it in that language because our culture, that's like a hot button issue.
It is.
If you discriminate, if you're exclusive and disqualify people from being a part of this, of our community, well, then you're considered kind of a bad person.
Yeah.
And so it turns out then that the pro-life view, our view, is actually the most tolerant and inclusive view. Because our view says no human being, regardless of their size, regardless of their level of development, regardless of their race, their gender, regardless of anything, should be excluded from the community of human persons. Rather, our view of humanity is inclusive, wide open to all people, especially to those people who are small, who are vulnerable, and who are defenseless, which of course the unborn are.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, I got to read a quote to you here, and I wonder how you would respond to something like this, all right? So Alberto Gubalini, I shared this on the show before you came on, from Monash University in Melbourne. He's at the Center for Applied Philosophy and Public Ethics. He says, circumstances occurring after birth such that would have justified abortion before birth, what we call afterbirth abortion, should be permissible. Both a fetus and a newborn certainly are human beings and potential persons, but neither is a person in the sense of subject of a moral right to life. We take person to mean an individual who is capable of attributing to her own existence some or at least basic value such that being deprived of this existence represents a loss to their life. And I go, whoa, sounds like they're playing a semantic game here, but.
Yeah, wow. I mean, all I can say is wow to that, because this is obviously an extreme view. In fact, most abortion choice advocates wouldn't even go as extreme as this gentleman did. What's great about the quote is that it shows the logical absurdity of some advocates of abortion. In fact, he's just like Peter Singer and a number of other ethicists who argue that in some instances, killing an unborn, or I should say killing a born child, even for a few months after they're born, is morally permissible. And of course, this makes sense on their view, right? Because if there's nothing special about the unborn, if being a human being is not relevant, and therefore it's okay to kill the unborn, well, those same things apply even after the human being is born, right? If there's nothing special about the unborn, then there's nothing special about born human beings either, because they're both human beings. And so what this person's doing is exactly what I was alluding to with the SLED test, and that is that they are arbitrarily deciding what it takes to be a valuable member of the human community.
Yes.
They're saying, yes, the unborn is a human being, because of course they can't deny the science, which we talked about in the show before this. They can't deny it's a human being. So what are we going to do? Us, the strong people out here, are going to create a set of criteria that will be used to disqualify those who are weak, small, and vulnerable.
Wow.
And so in this guy's case, and in Peter Singer's case, and a number of people who advocate after birth abortion, which is basically infanticide,
Yeah.
what they're saying is being a human is not enough. Instead, you have to be a human, and you have to be aware of moral, categories, or you have to be able to feel pain, or you have to be able to be have thoughts about the future, or be self-aware. And so these are just completely arbitrary. You just have these humans who are just deciding, well, I'm going to decide that you are not a valuable person based on this arbitrary characteristics. And that's exactly what we've seen with the Third Reich. That's exactly what we've seen with slavery in America and elsewhere. Yeah, you're a human being, but now I'm going to, because I'm in power, because I'm in control, because I can do what I want, I'm going to disqualify you out of value. I'm going to disqualify you out of personhood based on criteria that I've just made up. Right? I mean, that guy just made those things up.
Wow.
He's saying I forgot the words, but he used a subject of a moral conscience or something like this.
Yes,
Whatever.
An individual who's capable of attributing to her own existence basic values such that being deprived of this existence would represent a loss to her. Yeah.
Right. Who says that's the character? Who says that's the quality that determines you to be a valuable human being?
Right.
That person does. Well, maybe we're gonna make it some other quality, some other day. Maybe we'll make it people who wear black shirts, and ties.
There you go.
I mean, it's just completely arbitrary.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to spend too much time on this because this represents maybe only 1% of abortion choice advocates. Most people will not say, yeah, not only can we have an abortion, but we can kill actually born human beings. Most people will say, no, after birth, you can't kill them. They're going to reserve their views on abortion for simply the time prior to birth.
Wow.
Yeah, so Alan, what point do we break away from a debate? I mean, if you can't, if you're talking to a person like this, when do you just stop and say, I can't make headway?
Well, that's a good question. So, one of the things that I talk about in my role at Stand to Reason, which is where I work, is that we are ambassadors for Jesus Christ. This is something that the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians 5:20 talks a lot about. And what it means to be an ambassador, if you just think of a political ambassador, somebody who is called to represent something, and of course we represent Jesus Christ, and with regards to the pro-life view, we represent the pro-life position. And when you go to a foreign people or to a country or to somebody else who disagrees with you, your job is simply to present the truth or your message in a persuasive and gracious way. And I believe that once we've made that point, once we've made our case, we presented the truth, we've done it in a compelling way, and we've done it in a gracious way that brings honor to Jesus Christ, right? Because we want to speak in a gracious, winsome manner. Once we've done that, and maybe we've had a few opportunities to interact with the person, I believe there does come a point in which you say, look, the results are not up to us. Okay, we are not called to be committed to the end result of changing people's minds or even bringing them to Christ.
That's true.
That's the Holy Spirit's job, right?
Yes.
Our job is to be a faithful ambassador to communicate the truth in a persuasive and gracious way, and then be the result up to God. So I think that it takes a certain amount of wisdom to know at what point have we reached where we're talking to somebody, we've presented a scientific defense, we presented a philosophical defense, maybe we've even presented a biblical defense if they consider the Bible a trustworthy source of authority. And then, you know what, if you've done that and you've gone a few rounds with them, and I don't mean rounds as in like an argumentative way, but you've had some good give and take, there might come a point in which you might say, yeah, I don't know if this is worth going, any further. Mm-hmm. But what I found, Marianne, especially in these examples where we talked about Camp Joshua, where we take students into real life situations, the vast majority of people, even who might identify themselves as pro-life, don't necessarily think that abortion is wrong in all 9 months of pregnancy and for virtually any reason. Some might say, yeah, I'm pro-choice, but just in the cases of, the first or second trimester, or maybe I don't think that abortion's right to be used as a method of birth control. And so a lot of these people can change their minds, and so I would say we shouldn't err on, quitting too early, because a lot of people, you can make some headway with them if you just use the right tactics. And in one of the points that we kind of talked about in the show was that, there's only one question to resolve: what is the unborn? And one of the key mistakes I see people make, pro-lifers make, is they spend a lot of time talking not about abortion, but everything else. They end up talking about rape and incest, or financial hardship, or the right to choose, the right to privacy. And they'll spend week after week after week maybe going back and forth with somebody. And they'll come to me and they'll say, Alan, see, nobody changes their mind. And I'll say to them, yeah, but you didn't talk about abortion. What you talked about is financial hardship and choice and rape and privacy and all those other things, but you didn't talk about abortion. That's why you have to bring the conversation back to the one key question: what is the unborn? And so with proper tactics, I find that many people who were once frustrated that they couldn't make any headway talking to an abortion choice advocates can actually make a lot of headway once they use the right tactics. Focus on the key question: what is the unborn? And then use a scientific argument to prove the unborn is a human being just like you and me.
Wow. Very helpful. Thank you.
Very, very helpful. Thanks. How can people are going to want to hear you more and learn more about this subject? Where can people get a hold of? Do you blog? You've got stuff like that?
Yeah, so our website is str.org, which stands for stand2reason.org. That's the acronym, str.org. And on that website, we have a blog. We have also a YouTube channel where I've offered probably a dozen or so short videos, maybe about 5 minutes long or so, arguing for various aspects of abortion. On our STR website, I have an article called The Sled Test where I go into a lot more detail about that. In fact, Marianne, I emailed you the link to that just before we got on the show. And so there's actually a number of different things at our website, str.org, which deal with the issue of abortion. So yeah, absolutely. Those are things that I do.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for serving Christ with your life and being able to help equip people with these truths so that, Lord willing, it'll be multiplied from what God has given to you to a lot more people around the world.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Man, well, hey, we got to get out there to California and hang out with them.
That's right.
You're in California,
you need to come
right?
To Oregon.
San Diego.
San Diego. See, I love San Diego. San Diego. Portland? Yeah. San Diego? Oh, yeah. Now we're talking. Awesome. Well, Alan, thanks so much for joining us for this extended interview and taking time for us. You guys keep up the good work there.
Yes.
Thanks,
you
Eric.
so much.
Bye, Marianne.
God bless.
Bye. We'll see you around.
God bless you as well.
That was awesome. Really good.
Yeah.